should answer right now, but otherwise I'm just going to plow through. So there's 5 concepts I want to talk about at the beginning as an introduction. And we've talked about voluntary exchange and involuntary exchange quite a bit. Involuntary exchange is the problem of having not too great an asymmetry in bargaining power. Now, most of us agree if an exchange is truly voluntary, there is no problem and the state shouldn't interfere. We've seen a lot of concrete examples in the last couple of weeks where people have bought up large amounts of crucial supplies or gloves and hand wash, hand sanitizer, and then tried to resell it at a much higher price. The question is, should the state intervene? Should the state outlaw those kinds of transactions? So one problem with the idea of all exchanges improving all parties to the exchange requires that it actually be voluntary. So we've tried to problematize that. Second idea that I'm going to talk about quite a bit today is transaction costs. Now, I argue that transactions costs have 3 parts: triangulation, transfer, and trust. Triangulation is we have to find each other. Transfer is we have to make the delivery, we have to make the payment. And trust means that we each think that the other one is not going to harm us or cheat us. Now, an awful lot of the institutions we see in society are designed to solve those 3 problems in different ways. In some ways, the state solves those problems. In some ways, the market does. We've talked about market failure and the problem with government failure and market failure. Most institutions at some level are at least in part designed to solve problems of transactions cost. The third concept is permissionless innovation. One of the problems with innovation is that it's hard to predict, and in fact it may be accidental. Someone who makes an important new discovery, introduces a new product, may just be lucky. But the fact that they were lucky doesn't mean that we don't think they should be entitled to some part of the rewards. So I've tried to make a distinction in class between being morally deserving of a benefit and being entitled to that benefit, because we've chosen a set of rules that reward people for going out and trying to find new ways to serve other people. So permissionless innovation means that I don't need the state to give me permission, and not just the state, I don't need some large corporation because they have a patent. So there's all sorts of restrictions where innovations require the permission of someone else, and that someone else may not care, or they may actively have incentives to try to block the innovation. So societies that prosper are those that foster permissionless innovation, that don't have other corporations that prevent you from acting and don't have state regulations that prevent you from acting. On the other hand, we have to solve the problem of market failure, and so regulations are trying to balance. The Food and Drug Administration, for example, the argument for the Food and Drug Administration is asymmetric information. That is, sellers know more about the quality of perhaps the drug that they're selling than the person who buys it. Well, suppose someone announces they have a new coronavirus vaccine. We all want to buy that probably. The problem is that we're not sure if it actually works, and it may have bad side effects. So the Food and Drug Administration now is under a lot of pressure from all sides. People are saying you need to fast track any innovation about a coronavirus vaccine. Okay, fair enough, but what if it's like thalidomide? What if it has unexpected side effects that don't appear for at least a month after the time that you take the vaccine? So the problem of permissionless innovation is one that everybody has criticisms about, but it's actually a very difficult problem to solve. The fourth concept that we've talked about quite a bit is profits. Profits are the reward to permissionless innovation. Profits are what you're entitled to if you create a way of serving other people. Now, profits are just what's left over after what's left over from the voluntary transactions that you use to sell the product to willing consumers after you pay all of your input suppliers in voluntary contracts. So if all those contracts are voluntary, I find input suppliers that are happy to sell me the inputs that I need, and then I find consumers who are happy to buy the product that I use those inputs to make. If I have profits left over afterwards, that's actually a sign of the social value that I've created. It's odd that we often think of profits as being theft, Profits are the sign of the social value that we've created. However, it's also true that is in response to rent seeking or the use of government protection, maybe protection against foreign trade, maybe subsidies that come because we're selling to government and not to consumers. All of those things can increase what looks like our accounting profits. And then it's true that profits are not a sign of creating value. So in a crony capitalist system, it's absolutely true that there's a legitimate complaint about the size of profits. And so, again, it's a difficult problem.
Professor Munger?
Consumer surplus, and this is something we've talked about some in class. Consumer surplus is the difference between what you have to pay for something and what you would pay for something. And usually I have to have a kind of counterfactual here where I say imagine that stores were closed or shelves were empty. But in fact, now many of you have probably had that experience. So suppose you go to buy water or toilet paper at the grocery store, but the shelves are empty. Well, how much would you pay for the right to be able to buy toilet paper at the normal price? That's your ticket to capitalism. Your ticket to capitalism is how much it costs you to have access to a system which operates largely in the background, just providing services. There's trucks that run all night. There's people that unload them. And you walk into the store and you expect to be able to buy toilet paper for 70 cents a roll. Well, there's a lot going on behind that. So we measure profits, we talk about prices, but we don't often think that the benefit, the ticket to capitalism that we'd be willing to pay is the difference between what we have to pay in a well-functioning capitalist system and the amount that we would be willing to pay. On the other hand, consumer surplus might often be taxed away, or it might be, as we've seen in the case of so-called price gouging, it might be taken by producers who have a market power position and are able to charge a high price. So I wanted to start with a review of those 5 concepts, and now we're going to go a little bit faster.
Professor Munger?
Yes.
Quick question on profits. If you were to see a particular company or a particular industry registering what might be called above average profits, even for an extended period, would you consider that also added value of the way you've described it, or is there something wrong, some kind of market failure?
No, there are substantial entry barriers. So it's possible that the company is enjoying a profit that comes as a result of having a patent. And that patent, maybe they extended it, or maybe they made political payoffs where a very special law was passed extending the protection for that industry. So it's certainly possible that an industry like the sugar industry in the United States makes gigantic supernormal profits. The reason is that the US has a sugar quota to try to prevent the low-cost sugar producers of the Caribbean from being able to ship sugar to the United States. Now, sugar, there's no national defense argument for sugar. We have all sorts of substitutes, and if we had to, we could probably do without sugar for a while. And we do have large production of corn syrup and beet sugar. But the sugar industry in Florida and Texas is substantially protected. In that case, yes, if I look at profits that continue over a long time, because it's impossible to enter the industry, then yes, I think that's a problem. Now you might ask though, what about a company like Apple that has had high profits over a long period of time, apparently because of the excellence of their products? Now I've never been seduced by the siren song of Apple. I try never to buy Apple products. But a lot of people really love Apple. They'll pay an extra amount, and that's as a result that company's earning profits. So
that was true, and that was true of Alcoa. That was true of Alcoa for many years. You know, they just kept innovating, and they had the low cost, and they weren't doing it out of price gouging or anything like that. Just amazing, repetitive innovation. But I hear you. Yeah.
There is always the question: are there entry barriers that are protecting them, or is it excellence? And it may be some combination. So it would take a little bit of detective work, but in a way, the point of your question that I would want to leave with, high profits over a long period of time are not necessarily a sign of cronyism. It could easily be true that high profits over a period of time are excellence. but we can't be sure, and it does raise questions because the standard kind of model would say high profits are a signal that other companies should enter and start to make the same product, which will drive profits down. So under normal circumstances, high profits over a long period of time are probably a bad sign. But you can certainly think of examples where that's not true. And Apple, Alcoa, there are others that are clearly that company was doing something right. And that's the reason we have firms in the first place. These are not just a set of contracts. This is management, a set of directors, a group of people that have formed a team to try to accomplish something. And some teams are just better than others, although we don't get to see that because all sports are canceled. But at least the Yankees have not won any games yet. So I'm taking some solace from the fact that the Yankees have not yet won any games. So the next slide, I want to claim that what we observe in the new sharing economy is the result of two different factors. And those two factors are, for the first time in human history, if you're able to sell reductions in transactions costs. You're able to sell reductions in transactions costs. Now, it's hard to think what that might mean, but suppose that, and this is true, you're going to think less of me, I'm sorry. I have a shiny black BMW 330. I'm just the sort of asshat you think I am. I'm swerving in and out of traffic and flashing my lights because I have a black BMW 330 and I must be a badass. Well, suppose that I pull up beside a young woman walking on the road and roll down my window and say, "Hey, you need a ride?" Well, she'll be pretty upset. I mean, it's just creepy. But the fact is, I have a car in a few extra minutes. Someone needs a ride. There should be a mutually beneficial voluntary transaction that we can negotiate. The problem is that the transactions cost of doing that are too high. It's too hard for us to find each other. It's difficult for us to make the payment because I don't take credit cards, and we don't trust each other because she doesn't trust me. I don't trust her not to rob me. So mutually beneficial transactions do not take place. But there's a company called Uber that sells reductions in transactions costs. Now notice that Uber is not a taxi company. All that Uber is selling is a reduction in the transactions cost of someone who has a car in a few minutes, selling that to a person who needs a ride. So these are peer-to-peer transactions that are enabled by selling reductions in transactions cost. Let me say that again. These are peer-to-peer transactions that are enabled by selling reductions in transaction cost. And then over here on the other column, we have excess capacity. So low, moderate, or high excess capacity. One of the genius things about the sharing economy is the commodification of excess capacity. So if I have excess capacity, usually what I think of is that's a storage problem. I want to pay to make sure other people don't use or steal. Look back in the current era, say, why were these people so selfish? They lost twice. First, they spent a lot of money to keep things under lock and key. And second, they forego the revenue stream that should have come from being able to rent out or commodify modular parts of excess capacity. So an example that you may know, there's a company called Turo, T-U-R-O, and I've talked about this in class some. If I go to the airport and park, I'm paying somebody to store my car. 200 yards away, there's another company that people pay to rent out cars. So I'm paying to park, and Hertz is making money by renting out cars. Combine those. Why not, if I'm away for a week, why not rent my car out? So what Turo does is rent the cars that would be in the airport parking lots. Now, you might say, I don't want to do that. I don't trust people. I have a hard time finding them. But remember, we have a way of reducing transactions costs. So if we go down here, there are some things that probably, even though they have high excess capacity, it's going to be difficult to reduce transaction costs. So I have to brag a little bit. I am an assiduous brusher of teeth. Nothing creepy. I only brush my own teeth. But for 2 minutes every morning and 2 minutes every 3 hours and 56 minutes every day, my toothbrush is hanging there unused. It seems unlikely that we're going to be able to find a way to commodify or sell off parts of that. Although my wife and I do share a base for an electric toothbrush. So there is some sharing on a local level, even in my house. The best value proposition is where there's high excess capacity and high but reducible transactions costs. So an example of that would be my son, who was in graduate school at NYU, and he lived on the Lower East Side in New York, would often be away at a conference, or sometimes he went to Berlin in Germany for 6 weeks to finish his dissertation. Now, he could have continued to pay on his apartment in the Lower East Side, but instead he rented it out on an app called Airbnb. So Airbnb is not a hotel company. Airbnb sells reductions in transactions costs to enable peer-to-peer transactions between a person who has excess capacity in housing and a person who wants a place to stay. Now, normally they would find out it would be hard for them to find each other. If my son had walked around New York and asked people, hey, you want to stay in my place? Again, creepy, but you don't have to do it because Airbnb takes care of the problems of finding each other, making the payment, and because there's reviews and you know the identity of the participants, you can achieve trust. It's not perfect, but it's a way of commodifying excess capacity. So I should also note that sometimes just the ability to reduce transactions cost with an app may be a way to increase production. And I think we're going to see this as a result of the coronavirus. So right now in Brooklyn, New York, there are bearded young men, there's bearded young people. There are people who have beards that are making pickles. And these pickles are maple, garlic, bacon flavored pickles, and a little jar of them costs $12. Now, it used to be that since all costs to consumers are transactions costs, that these pickles were at least $30. It was $12 purchase price, but it was $18 or $20 to take a train across the river to Brooklyn, walk up, buy these things, and then take them back. Nobody's going to pay $30 for a jar of pickles. But if I can find them online and have it delivered cheaply by an Uber driver, I might be willing to pay the $12 for the pickles plus the $1 for the delivery. So as a result, the costs of high quality, artisanally made food products has come down a lot from the perspective of consumers. As a result, a lot of people are selling stuff and having it delivered. So the delivery industry, as you have now even more so from this was true a year ago, but now because of the coronavirus, delivery of artisanal foods is going to explode. And once it happens, it's not going to go back. There's going to be a fundamental change where people start making low-cost, high-quality artisanal products and having them delivered, just because we have apps that solve the three problems of triangulation, transfer, and trust. So watch for this. This doesn't have to be all about excess capacity. Some of it can just be about reducing transactions costs. Now, story.
Professor Munger?
Yes.
Go back to the prior slide, please. I really want to live in hipster heaven, and you never told us what that was.
That's Brooklyn, New York.
Oh, the artisanal thing. Okay. Yeah.
The bearded young people.
Yeah.
In Brooklyn, New York, surrounded by other hipsters who are happy not to have to go to a nice restaurant, which is where their parents basically took them as punishment.
Right.
They're happy to go to a hipster restaurant instead. Yeah. And these are hipster pickles. I should have made clear. The name on them should be hipster pickles.
The opposite of these big bad box stores. Yeah. Okay.
But those could be delivered also. That the once we get over the hump of thinking in terms of delivery. So that's actually a good point. Let me say a little bit more about that. As it stands, I get in my car, I leave the garage, I go to a place with a really big parking lot, I put my car there, I walk in with a cart, I fill the cart with stuff from the shelves, I stand in line, a long line, I take the stuff out of the cart and put it on the conveyor belt. They look at it for a fraction of a second, take that same stuff, put it in a plastic bag, and put it back in the cart. And then I take the cart to the car. I put all of the bags in the car. I take my car to my house, all the plastic bags for absolutely no reason. Those plastic bags were used for like 7 or 8 minutes. So an enormous cost to the environment, all because we're not very good at delivery. So the fact that we're getting better at delivery is going to dramatically reduce all of our footprint on the environment, regardless of whether these are artisanal products or big box stores. So there's a revolution that's going on, and I'm sort of relentlessly optimistic, I admit. This is terrible. The coronavirus is terrible. I'm very sorry that I don't get to see y'all in class, but in many ways, this is going to hasten, and we'll talk about this more in a few minutes, but this is going to hasten a set of processes which were already underway that are going to change the lives of the students in this class in ways that 50 years from now we'll look back on and say, that made such a difference, in ways that at the time were hard to predict. 3 men. First, dissertation advisors won the Nobel Prize in 1993. And at my dissertation defense, he asked a question, and you may have seen what economists do when they don't know the answer to the question. They go to the board and they start drawing equations. Now, to be fair, this is also what economists do when they think they do know the answer to the question, so it's pretty good camouflage. So Doug asked a question, I started drawing on the board, and after 2 interminable minutes, he raised his hand, and he said in a voice that you might use to address a well-loved but not very bright child, Michael, the answer is transaction costs. And I soon found out that for Douglas North, it didn't really matter what the question was. The answer is transaction costs. No matter what the question is, the answer is always transaction costs. And he actually has a point. Ronald Coase, the second man, won the Nobel Prize in 1996, and he famously asked a really great question in 1937, and that is, economists constantly talk about the price mechanism as a way of organizing economic activity. We've talked a lot about it in this class. We have sung the praises of the price mechanism. Okay, if prices are so great, why are there firms? If prices are so great, why are there firms? Because firms are the suppression of the price mechanism. Firms, if I'm on a production line, I don't put a bolt into the fender of a Buick and then put it on eBay and auction it off and somebody buys it and then finishes assembling the car. What happens is it goes down a production line. There's no price mechanism operating there. Now you can say that at some level the firm is operating in a price system because they have to pass the profit test. But internally, firms do not use markets because access to markets is expensive. So let me see if I'm getting through to you. Ronald Coase asked the question, if markets are so great, why are there firms? And they did rise up and speak as if with one voice, and they did say transaction costs. Because I already told you the answer to every question is transaction costs. And that was a question. So most of the rest of this hour, the answer to every question is transaction costs.
Professor
So now,
Munger,
yes.
might the new phrase be social distancing? The answer to everything from now on is maybe both.
But I'm going to defend my position, sweetie.
Oh,
Social distancing is a form of transaction cost. We have to overcome it. The third man is the widget, and notice that it is complicated, made of metal, and fits together. Not sure how it works. My wife thinks that many men are like that. The widget is a stand-in, an abstract for products that people want. Let's suppose that A owns it and will take any price greater than $1. B wants it and will pay any price less than $5. What might keep that transaction from occurring? Well, transaction costs. So let's suppose that transactions cost are $7. So notice, A, it's not trash. A would not sell it for less than $1, but any price greater than $1, A will sell it. B wants it, would pay any price less than $5. Now, suppose in economics class, I ask you what's going to happen. Well, in economics class, you would say, well, clearly there's a bargaining space between $1 and $5. They'll negotiate a mutually beneficial price. Now, this is something we've talked about before. Notice that any agreement on price requires a disagreement about value. Any agreement about price requires a disagreement about value. Suppose we agree to sell it for $3. I must think it's worth less than $3, and you must think it's worth more than $5. That's really important. The price system generates agreements between people who disagree about value. Normally in economics, we say, oh, well, everybody agrees about the price. That's not the point. They disagree about the value. That's why transactions take place. That's why the transaction is mutually beneficial. It moves from someone who values it less to someone who values it more at a price that benefits both. Now, let's suppose, though, that transactions cost are $7. Well, if that's true, and this is actually the real world, so I said in economics, if I ask you what will happen, well, there's a bargaining space, they'll sell at $3. No, that's not true. They've never met. A doesn't know that B exists, and B doesn't know that A has a widget. So it's sitting in A's garage underneath a bunch of old towels. A bunch of stuff is in the wrong place. We're paying to store stuff that other people value more than we do, but we don't know it because of transactions cost. This is not even a commodity. They've never considered exchanging. But suppose that an entrepreneur, we'll call her E, has a piece of software that reduces transactions cost by $6. So it's down to just $1. That means that now a mutually beneficial transaction can take place. B pays $4 and makes $1. A gets $2 and makes $1. E gets a $1 licensing fee on the software app that she designed, and $1 gets used up in like friction in physics. Transactions cost are like friction in physics. It makes things a little bit more difficult. So with the same amount of widgets, there's no new widgets here. With the same amount of widgets, the world is a wealthier and more prosperous place. So we can reduce our footprint on the environment just by making better use of the stuff we already have. We have plenty of stuff. There's plenty of stuff. We're just paying to store it instead of sharing it. If we can figure out a way to share it, we can dramatically increase how happy and prosperous we are while at the same time reducing the impact on the environment. Professor Salsman, you have unmuted.
Yes, I just wanted to say quickly and stress this point, which is a really good one.
I can't hear you.
Can you hear me?
Louder.
I just want to stress this point. It's the same amount of widgets, which means wealth must have something more to do with the utility we get from things, the satisfaction we get from things. We've talked about that before. However amorphous that term, it's important to realize here, it's not just quantity of stuff, but its value to us, whether it comes to us or not.
Thank you. So to remind you, I wanted to say it a couple times before I put it up. Triangulation, transfer, and trust are the three kinds of transactions costs. Triangulation means we have to find each other, agree on terms. Transfer means we make the payment and we have to deliver the good in a way that's basically invisible. And trust is a way of outsourcing the assurance of honesty and the performance of the terms of the contract. Now, I forget sometimes how good Uber is at doing this. I was in Australia and was going to visit a friend of mine, Jeffrey Brennan, who lives outside of Canberra. I had an apartment in Canberra, and Jeffrey called and asked if I would be willing to help. There was an elderly Polish philosophy professor and his wife that were going to go to the dinner party. So I said, sure. So I got an Uber. We went to their house, picked them up, and he was 80, lived in Poland all of his life. His English was okay, but it wasn't great. And you could see he was looking around because he was used to thinking, if there's no meter, this is sketchy. So if you're in a car in another country and there's no meter, you're going to be kidnapped. So he probably thought this was terrifying. So I'm talking to the driver because it's Australia. You have to talk to the driver. We get there and I just get out and say, thanks. And he, of course, says, yeah, no worries, mate. And the Polish professor thinks I'm trying to stiff him with the bill. So he pulls out his wallet and he tries to pay the driver, and the driver's saying, no, it's already paid. And my professor friend thought it was magic. How did you pay him without touching him? Well, Uber does a lot of things very quickly because it reduces we don't have to negotiate on a price. We don't have to make the payment. I can decide on a tip. I can decide on a rating later, but an awful lot of things are basically invisible. And if you're used to that, you take it for granted. But old people that use these kinds of apps for the first time, it's shocking how much easier it is to engage in mutually beneficial transactions. Now, I have an embarrassing admission. I have a storage unit. And in the storage unit, there is an outboard motor. I do not have a boat. I do have a very nice outboard motor. And that outboard motor has been there for 12 years. I pay $175 a month to store my outboard motor and a bunch of furniture from my two hipster sons who have moved around a lot. So we have a ton of stuff in this storage unit. I have a garage full of stuff. I have closets full of stuff. We have so much excess capacity. So as Professor Salsman was saying, if things are in the wrong place, wealth, a way to increase wealth would just be to make better use of the stuff we already have. It's not money, and it's not more stuff. It's subjective utility. It's moving. Human beings create value by saying that's something that I like and then using it. So all of this stuff I am preventing somebody else from using. It cost $175 a month. Now that outboard motor is worth about $3,000. It's a nice, I don't want to brag, it's a nice outboard motor. It was when I put it 12 years ago. If you do the math and you multiply 12 years of months times $175, I should have set the thing on fire. I should have just set it on fire. What I need to do is sell it off, give away all this stuff instead of paying $175 a month to store it. So excess capacity is actually variable with respect to the transactions cost of reassigning the use of the durable good. That's, in effect, that's a theorem. When I look at my closet or garage, I don't see excess capacity. What I see is storage of valuable items. But those suits, the shirts, my car, my lawnmower, my outboard motor, all of those things could be used by someone else. So lowering transactions cost raises the opportunity cost of idle durable goods. But that doesn't translate into excess capacity until we have some way of reducing transactions costs. Oops, sorry. So here's the thing, and this actually exactly paraphrases Professor Salzman's comment from before. There's actually no set capacity. It varies inversely with transactions costs. Our idea of capacity is it has something to do with technology. That's not true. Capacity is human use and value. Human beings create value. Stuff doesn't create value. So my wife sent me this cartoon, and I'm sure this is true. We're storing a bunch of stuff in our garage. What is all this junk? You guys may have had this experience. Oh, we're saving it for you. This is all your elementary school stuff, your middle school stuff, and when you get your first apartment, you can have dishes. Well, my first apartment will be a backpack that I carry around the world between gigs. Young people are much less likely to value stuff. Young people value experiences. And I think, I'm sorry to bring up a sore point, many of you who had a nice room at Duke, if some of you are seniors, I'm really sorry. You have a bunch of stuff that's going to be shipped to you. It may not ever work out. Young people already are using less stuff and more interested in experiences. So on my Facebook page, you'll see a picture of my pathetic car in my house. My son, you'll see pictures of him hang gliding in Nepal. So we have different ideas of value. So I think that this storage thing is okay boomer. Although now that I'm doing this, I guess it's okay zoomer. But the thing that we use, old people want stuff. We want to be able to store stuff, surrounded by stuff, and then we have to have really big houses to store that stuff. So in all sorts of ways, our footprint is larger than it should be. Our houses are too big. We have too much storage, and we have a bunch of stuff that was expensive to make that we're preventing other people from using because we're keeping it under lock and key. those things are going to change. If not because individuals change, then because generations change. So I should note, Mark Andreessen is a famous venture capitalist, and I did not retouch this photograph. He is a human cone head. That's actually what his head looks like.
I think I've seen him on SNL.
He's a great guy, and in
Conehead,
2011, November 2011, in the Wall Street Journal, he wrote a very famous article that software eats the world. And what's interesting about that is, and let me say, if you only remember one thing about what I say today, remember this. Only one thing, remember this. Software is to service jobs as robotics and automation are to production jobs, to manufacturing jobs. Software is to service jobs as robotics and automation are to manufacturing jobs. So an awful lot of service jobs are appearing because software can do it. And that's going to happen much faster in the era of coronavirus. It's a dramatic increase of not actually having human-to-human contact. So used to be, and I've said this in class before, but let me remind you, I would walk into a McDonald's and I would look up on a board and I would read off some words: Big Mac, French fries, and a milkshake. And the person behind the counter would look on her keyboard for the corresponding words. I read some words, I said them, and she then looks for those on her keyboard. All you have to do is turn the cash register around. Just turn the cash register around. Instead of finding the words on the board, I find the word on the keyboard or on the kiosk. All of those people on the front line lost their jobs. When I travel, I often rent a car. Used to be that there would be 3 Hertz employees, one to check your ID, one to give out the keys, and then one to check your contract on the way out. All 3 of those people are now taken up by my cell phone. In my cell phone, I get a code that I press into a box, and then I get the key and I drive the car off. Thousands and thousands of people are losing their jobs. If we move to a delivery economy where going to restaurants is more difficult and more expensive because of coronavirus, then the delivery part of this is going to increase. Now, some of that means that we're going to have delivery workers instead of frontline workers. But delivery can also be done by software-enhanced hardware. So drones, driverless cars, all of those things truck drivers, all of those things do not inherently require, and those are all service jobs, all of those things do not inherently require a human being. And you can go farther. Accountants, people who do medical care. If you have an expert system, so instead of having to go to a doctor's office, you can just have a computer screen. They can look at you, but they're also using an AI expert system that has used machine learning to try to categorize different sets of symptoms. And it'll do as good a job as the doctor. Now, there may still be a doctor to check over it, but you'll be able to handle thousands of patients in a day instead of dozens. So as a result, software is taking over service jobs at a rate that actually dwarfs the loss of jobs in manufacturing. So let me ask, and we've talked about this a little bit in class also, but let me remind you, the response of many people has been to say what we need is higher minimum wages. Now think about that for a minute. Higher minimum wages, maybe that helps the people in the service sector who have a hard time making a living. But if you raise the price of something people are already substituting away from, it is unlikely they'll use more of it. In fact, they'll use less of it and fast. So there was a study by a Duke professor at the Sanford Institute about the effects in Seattle of the $15 minimum wage. And he found that the number of hours worked by low-wage workers fell by 30%. So there's a dramatic fall in the number of hours worked. They're getting paid more per hour, but a lot of people lost their jobs. So Seattle is now having to deal with that fact. A lot of restaurants in Seattle are closed. They will not reopen. The $15 an hour minimum wage in Seattle is going to kill the restaurant business, the go-to restaurant business in Seattle. Now, obviously, coronavirus played a role in that because they had to close for a while. But when they reopen, they're going to be competing with delivery services. So the reason I've tried to spend more time on this is to recognize that the combination of prices and the transformation in technology are going to change the way that we think about jobs and work. I'm a tenured professor. I don't have to worry about that. You're going to have to worry about that. You young people are going to have to try to position yourselves so that you can take advantage of this new world, or at least not be hammered by it. So some of you have probably noticed, and it's kind of annoying, whenever there's a fire, there's all these sirens. So if we want fewer fires, what we should do is outlaw sirens. Said no one ever. Except that we are saying exactly that about prices. So anti-price gouging laws say that when there's scarcity, prices go up. Do we try to solve the problem of scarcity? No, we try to solve the problem of price. But prices are just sirens that go off when the fire of scarcity is burning. So the reason why a lot of people bought up all those hand sanitizers and toilet paper was that the price is too low. So notice that what happened was people tried to create a secondary peer-to-peer market in these products. So they've got a bunch of stuff on their shelves and they can sell it at home. And the apps that enable them to do that include Amazon or eBay. There's all sorts of ways that you can now sell things peer-to-peer. The reason that they were able to buy up large stocks of this stuff, though, is that the price was too low. Now, what happens when you walk into a store and the price is low? That's saying, take all you want. There's plenty for everybody else. Take all you want. There's plenty for everyone else. But if the price is high, what does that say? This is really scarce. Only take what you really need. So we artificially suppress price. And then when people buy it up and resell it, we say, no, no, you can't do that. So we're trying to outlaw sirens. That makes no sense. The result is there's no transactions of the thing whose price is being controlled. Suppose you're a poor person and you go in and you want to buy toilet paper or hand sanitizer. What is the price of toilet paper or hand sanitizer? It's infinity. I believe I told this joke already in class, but let me say it again. The old North Carolina joke about this is guy walks into a store after a natural disaster, and the owner of the store is selling cases of water for $30 a case. And the customer says, what the heck, $30 a case? That's outrageous. Guy down the street, this price for water is $7. And the owner says, well, fair enough. Go buy from him then. And the guy says, well, he's out. He doesn't have any water. And so the proprietor says, okay, tell you what, as soon as I run out, I'll start charging $7. So the point is that $30 is less than infinity. $30 is less than infinity. So if it's $30, you may think, gosh, that's expensive, but you are still able to buy it. If there's nothing there, it doesn't matter how cheap the price would have been of the thing that you can't buy. So toilet paper, frozen chicken, having a low price for a non-existent product is no help. It's better to have a high price for an existing product. Professor Salsman.
I was in a grocery store recently looking for my eggs, and there were no eggs, but there was a note scribbled. So I went to the manager, and I thanked the manager for having the store open. But I said, why don't you charge more for eggs? And he said, people will get mad at us. And I said, are they happy that there are no eggs? And he just, I don't think he ever thought he would be asked that. He was like, But they want, I mean, sometimes it's not just price controls. Some of them feel morally restrained. But it's weird, right? There's still no eggs.
But wait, the reason that there are price controls is precisely that people feel that. They actually would prefer no eggs to $15 a dozen eggs. In effect, they're revealing the fact they prefer no eggs, an infinite price, to $15, because they dislike the idea of being taken advantage of. But that's why we have these rules, is that price gouging laws are just wildly popular. The PPE question is that technical condition we've talked about before, non-worseness. Our concern for the poor is we want to make sure that they can buy the products that they need. So we will have laws against price gouging. What? If we have laws against price gouging, there's none of this stuff. That violates non-worseness. They would be better off if they have to have this. They really, really need eggs or milk. They would be able to buy it. Yes, it would be better still if they could buy it at the old price, but there won't be any. That's why the guy at the store said, tell you what, as soon as I run out, I'll charge $7 too. So having a high wage for a job that doesn't exist is no help. And yet we still support minimum wages. If you ask people, most of them say there should be minimum wages. But there won't be jobs. The fact that the job that I don't have pays a lot doesn't help me. So it violates non-worseness. And one of the hard things about PPE is to say, well, and then what? We have to consider the problem of non-worseness. Now, normally I would ask how many people had used BlaBlaCar. And some of you probably have used BlaBlaCar. If you spend any time in Central Europe, especially, BlaBlaCar is pretty common. And then I always ask someone, do they hitchhike? And no one hitchhikes. And then I ask why. Why does no one hitchhike? And they come, well, it's not safe. No, the answer is transaction costs. The answer to every question is transactions cost. This is a question. So the reason you don't hitchhike is transactions cost. BlaBlaCar is hitchhiking. BlaBlaCar is an app that provides 4 pieces of information. First, where are you now? Second, where do you want to go? Third, at what time do you want to go? And fourth, how much do you want to talk? Blah means don't like other people very much. Blah, blah means enjoys a natter. Blah, blah, blah means rarely pauses even for breath. And so BlaBlaCar, if I'm in Brno and I need to go to Prague tomorrow morning, there's a lot of trucks on the highway between Brno and Prague. And the train would cost me 90 euros. But for 10 euros, I can go from Brno to Prague at the time that I want and be dropped off pretty close to the place that I want to go and find a driver who is interesting to talk to. A lot of drivers actually are perfectly happy to have some company to talk to, particularly if they change. You don't have to put up with them for days. So BlaBlaCar is a pure saving in a way that Uber is not. That Uber driver would not go to that place unless you asked her to. BlaBlaCar is a truck or a car or a delivery service that's going to go to that place no matter what. That means that empty front seat, if you go out to I-40 or where you live, if you go out to one of the interstates, all of the trucks have an empty right front seat. BlaBlaCar commodifies the excess capacity of all those empty cars. So being able to sell that is really valuable. And in this case, it's a pure saving because all you're doing is commodifying something that would otherwise be wasted. So some of you will probably live in Washington, D.C. or have been there, or you live in a city that has HOV lanes. HOV lanes are high occupancy vehicle. And there was a famous case recently where there was a hearse in Nashville. Nashville, Tennessee has HOV lanes that only require 2 people. So a guy was driving a hearse, the police pulled him over and said, well, wait, you're only the one person. He said, no, there's another one in the back. Well, it's true, there was somebody in the coffin in the back, but that doesn't count as another person for the HOV lane. So he got in trouble. In Washington, D.C., it takes 3. It takes 3 people to qualify for the HOV lane. And as you see from the picture, the HOV lane is not empty, but it's close to empty. And they're pretty careful to police this. If there's not 3 people, then you'll get a pretty substantial ticket. And the ticket also goes on your driving record. But what this means is there's a lot of excess capacity right here, this empty lane. And all you would need is 3 people. So normally picking someone up, you would want them to pay you. An Uber driver is not going to pay you. But if there's an HOV lane, having 2 more passengers is actually valuable to the driver. So unsurprisingly, perhaps, there's an app, lines, and slug lines is a way of organizing this market for additional riders. So if you need a ride into DC and you live out in Virginia, you're going to go along 66 to somewhere in DC, it's understood that different people who are going different places will line up at different spots. So it's an extremely efficient system, very low cost system. You can line up at a spot where you need to go to the Navy Yard. You can line up at a spot if you need to go to Capitol Hill. And going there, they just pull off the highway. This is in a parking lot right by the highway. They pull off the highway. They get 2 passengers. They pull on the highway, and then they go right to their place of work using the HOV lane the whole way. And sometimes people will use this multiple times. They'll actually know each other. They'll ride together. This is a system that is, again, a pure saving. Those cars would be driving anyway. It's just that they would be clogging up the regular lanes. Now, 2 people get a free ride, so they don't have to drive themselves, and 1 person gets to use the HOV lane. There in North Carolina, it'll snow pretty hard every other year or so, and usually it takes a week sometimes for the local road to be plowed. But it wouldn't cost that much if you and your neighbors could somehow organize and get together in order to contract with somebody who owns a snowplow. But it's hard for the group of neighbors all to contract, and you face the free rider problem, because I'll say I'll pay, and you think, well, once the road is plowed, I won't have to pay. But suppose that there were an app, and there is one called Plows and Mows. So they have snow plows in winter, and they have mowing service in the summer, because every house in my neighborhood, they're acre lots, they're pretty big lots, but almost everybody, including me, has a riding lawnmower, which I use for 45 minutes once every 10 days. Otherwise, it sits in my garage right beside my BMW, both of which I rarely use. So if I could somehow commodify that or share it, Plows and Mows allows me to do that. So a group of neighbors all say, look, we'll pay $50. Well, if there's 12 of you, $600 is plenty to get a snowplow driver to come through your neighborhood for 20 minutes. That means that our neighborhood gets plowed. The result is we're all better off. We found a way to coordinate. It's just a peer-to-peer service, though. Plows and Mows does not sell snowplowing. Plows and Mows sells reductions in transactions cost of groups of people organizing. More generally, there is a thing called public goods that we've talked about a little bit. The nature of public goods is that they are non-rival in consumption and non-excludable in production or selling. So maybe the best things in life are free. The problem is that public goods at the margin have to be free. If price equals marginal cost is efficient, then what do we do when the marginal cost is equal to 0? Now, there was an economist named Eric Lindahl who figured out this problem. If each person would pay their marginal valuation, we can vary the quantity until we break even. So here you can see on this graph that the way that this works is this is one person's demand for the product, this is one person's demand for the product, this is one person's demand for the product. You sum them vertically. So what that means is the total demand for the product, the total willingness to pay, is the vertical sum for any amount of output. Well, here's the cost. And remember, if we produce it, since it's a public good, everybody gets to use it. Well, that means that if each person would just be willing to honestly pay their marginal cost, we can solve the problem of public goods. The problem is 2. 1, the honest revelation of price, and 2, the free rider problem, where I can always just say, well, I value it at 0. I'd be better off if all of us would announce our honest marginal valuation. But I individually be better off if I fib. That's a prisoner's dilemma. We come back again and again to the problem of the prisoner's dilemma. All of us would be better off if we cooperate, but I individually would be better off if I cheat. So what am I going to do? one answer is there a way to solve the problem either of non-rivalness in consumption or non-excludability in production? Well, what's interesting about that is non-rivalness in consumption is probably just real. That is, there's just as much left if I use some of it. But non-excludability is a technical condition. So here, rivalry in consumption, my using it diminishes the amount available for other people. That we're probably stuck with. But excludability is the property of a good where one person can be prevented from using it if they didn't pay. That's interesting because that is a transactions cost condition. Excludability is actually just a transactions cost condition. So there's four types of of goods. Private goods are excludable and rival. Public goods are neither excludable nor rival. Common pool resources, that is the kind that we talked about for the tragedy of the commons, are rival in consumption but not excludable. And then club goods are those that are locally non-rival in consumption but are excludable. So some of you may live in neighborhoods or have lived in neighborhoods that had a pool club or a tennis club or a golf club. So those up to the limit of congestion are adding more people doesn't reduce the amount available for anyone else. But you can say you can't use this unless you're a member of the club. Well, I'm interested in public goods. Excludability is largely a transactions cost condition that's unlike congestion or consumption rivalry. So a free ride receives benefit of a good but avoids paying for it. And that's mostly a transactions cost condition. Since people cannot be excluded from enjoying the benefits of a public good, individuals may withhold paying for that, hoping that somebody else will pay for it. That's why they're free riders. But the free rider problem prevents private markets from supplying public goods. So we usually call this a market failure. We say this is a market failure, which means that the state has to provide it. Well, wait, remember, non-excludability is a transactions cost condition. What if the transactions cost of exclusion and cooperation could be reduced by smart contracts? And smart contracts, one of the things we associate with smart contracts is Ethereum, the idea of blockchain. The way that we think of it now, it did not originate, but it was used in a way that was functional by Satoshi. Well, was used by the inventor of Bitcoin. And Bitcoin and blockchain can be separated. And then once you have blockchains, you can start to think in terms of smart contracts, and that may solve the problem of excludability. So a smart contract is written as code that's committed to the blockchain. The codes and condition are all publicly available on this distributed ledger. When an event is outlined in the contract is triggered, an expiration date, an asset's target price, the code executes. And so these, in the stock market, these might be exchanges where I have a trigger price or I have a maximum price. And if the conditions, I don't know what they are, but I've written out a set of instructions that contains contingencies. Now, we can watch the contract activity to try to understand the market while still maintaining the privacy of individual actors. The problem with our current system is that your identity is completely tied to solving the problem of trust. But blockchain contracts can be pseudonymous. That is, I only need to reveal as much information as I need in order to guarantee trust. And so when you think about it, suppose I have a reputation on Airbnb. So I've been a host, I have a reputation on Airbnb, and now, though, I want to get a loan or I want to open some other kind of business. The reputation I have from Airbnb, where I have 200 reviews, is not portable. I can't use it as a reputation somewhere else. Whereas if my reputation were actually contained in a blockchain account that was associated with some measure of trustworthiness that doesn't reveal my full identity, but that I can then use as a guarantee that I'm trustworthy, we've solved an important problem. So let's think of an example of a smart contract. My wife is, as many people are, very unhappy with mice, particularly if they're in the cupboard in the kitchen. So if there's a mouse in the cupboard in the kitchen, I know that for the next hour or so, I'm going to be occupied with trying to make sure that the mouse is removed. So what I'd like to do is solve this problem in a way that has low transactions costs. So what I want to do is hire someone that will execute the following contract. If a mouse is in the cupboard, catch it and actually kill it, but mostly catch it and get it out of there. So if the condition mouse in the cupboard is true, then catch the mouse. Notice that's a contingent order. If the condition mouse in the cupboard is not true, then do nothing. So I have a set of instructions that are contingent on empirical conditions. So I want to hire someone to do this. Now, having someone sit in my cupboard and execute these commands would be really boring for them and really expensive for me. So what I can do instead is have an analog smart contract. There is a picture of a smart contract. Notice that there's a trigger. So if we put cheese on this, if the condition mouse in the cupboard is true, it will snap and catch the mouse. If the condition mouse in the cupboard is not true, then nothing messes with the cheese and it doesn't snap. Now there are transactions costs. The mouse may be in the cupboard, but he's clever enough to just chew on the cheese a little bit. Sometimes we'll find the trap unsprung, but with almost all of the cheese eaten, which means that the mouse was too clever for me. So even though the mouse was in the cupboard, the contract did not execute. Or I may forget that the darn thing is in the cupboard and I reach back there and it snaps on my finger. So even though mouse in the cupboard is not true, it still executes. So there are some problems with this. Now, you're used to smart contracts of all sorts. If you buy something from a vending machine or a cappuccino machine, you put your money in there and then you press buttons. If the amount of money is enough to pay for the particular thing you have said that you want, it executes your command. There's no person living inside there. That's just a smart contract. So is this a way that we can solve the public goods problems? Well, let's consider three elements. A bridal or wedding registry, the software Pokemon Go, which is a game some of you may have played. You're a little young to have played Pokemon Go, but some of you probably have. And then Ethereum, using Ether or smart contracts, which are a way of writing down these instructions. Now, what are these three things going to do? They're going to solve the problem of transactions costs. Why do bridal registries exist? Bridal registries exist so that a couple getting married doesn't get no espresso makers and 3 waffle makers. You want to make sure that you get one and only one of exactly those things that you need. It also helps organize people who want to buy presents because they can take credit for it. Some bridal registries will show Smith bought this, Jones bought this. Oh, that's nice. Smith got them that. So you're also kind of claiming credit for it. So it's a list of a bridal registry, a wedding registry is a checklist. So there's a set of things and we make sure we each get one of them. It's a way of reducing transactions costs. It'd be very difficult for people to solve this problem otherwise because they'd have to have some sort of Zoom meeting or group phone call to try to decide how to do that. Now, Pokemon Go is not augmented reality. Augmented reality means that things that are not real are superimposed on the real world that's around you. But you're able to see this and interact with it as if it were real. And so it might be a map like here, or it might be an actual picture of the world on which, if you look at your phone, is superimposed some kind of image. And then a smart contract, what's interesting about smart contracts is if you ever bought a house or a car, or you participated in any sort of complicated transaction, there's someone who owns the title. Somebody has to cede that and say that this person actually owns it. There's a custodian and a sub-custodian and someone who actually wants to invest in the asset, and then other custodians that have to sign off. So for example, if I just want to buy something in the hardware store, I give a credit card to so if I give cash to the credit card, then that cash is literally just transferred to the owner of the store and he owns it. But suppose I use a credit card. It has to go through a custodian. It has to go through Visa or MasterCard or American Express. And they take a cut of it. So some of the cost is dissipated in transactions cost. If we have a smart contract, then anything that I want to use is like cash because I transfer it from my account to your account. We don't have to use intermediate custodians. We don't have to have the permission of the title attorney who does research to make sure that this is a good title. Well, suppose that you had smart glasses or VR goggles and you walked into the park, and in the park in your small town, you see superimposed, just like on Pokemon Go, this says $7 and this says $15. Arthur has signed up to pay $7 to mow this part of the public park. Maria has signed up to pay $15 to get this part of the public park mowed. And let's suppose further that that smart contract doesn't execute until the contribution to getting the park mowed. That means that I'm not taking a risk because my money will not be spent unless everyone pays their fair share. But like a wedding registry, all of the different parts of the park get mowed. So the result is that can solve the public goods problem. We don't have to have a public contract for mowing. We can do it with smart contracts. So we can make this more complicated. Suppose that, and again, this is like Pokemon Go, I look through my glasses and I see in my small town, we need to fix the copy machine. We need to repair the sink in the school. We need to fertilize these trees and we need to repair this pothole. Well, that pothole is actually right near my place of business. So I'm going to pay for that one. And other people can pay their parts of it. This is like a wedding registry in a way, because everyone gets to pay and take credit, but it's also a smart contract because it doesn't execute until everybody signs up for something. And it's like Pokemon Go because these things are superimposed. This augmented reality is superimposed on the world around me. So I, Allison Hall, pay for the pothole that I care about. Jason Paulino pays for that. Thomas Mbuto pays for his, and Carla Chang pays for hers. Each of us pay for something, but all of the public goods get provided, which means that we've solved the problem of non-excludability because the contract doesn't execute until we all pay our fair share. So what that means is that some of our notion about this difference between markets and the state are going to be blurred. This is a cooperative activity that's taking place in something like a market setting. Now, if I go back, where did these prices come from? These prices are bids from private contractors. There is no public works department. These prices are bids from private contractors. So it's a competitive bid process that's built into the software. I, as the consumer, don't have to. These are licensed bidders, licensed contractors who have reputations. You're only licensed if you have done a number of transactions that are under probation. So this person who's going to fix the town hall copy machine is licensed. So this is a private, decentralized, cooperative activity. It is neither markets nor the state. It's a cooperative hybrid activity that will solve much of the problem that we have of this false dichotomy we've come to argue about. Ideologically, we're arguing markets or the state. We don't have to do that. There are many ways that the new sharing economy will allow us to cooperate and participate in hybrid forms of organization that are going to change the very way that we think about the world. So you don't need to pay taxes. You yourself can buy the things that you want the government to do, but you're not doing it through the market. You're doing it through a cooperative system. We can also use blockchain to solve things like deeds of title, public records. Right now, these things are mostly stored in books or online, but there's a lot of information that's public. If we stored these instead on the blockchain, they would be much harder to fake, and we wouldn't have to pay someone else to maintain them. So the Suffolk Registry of Deeds here is a very large building. It's pretty expensive. All we need to do is have a distributed ledger on a bunch of servers, and we can use that building as a hospital. If you look, there are so many different county registries of deeds. This is a really expensive activity where people are basically storing records, but blockchains can store records more cheaply and more reliably. Well, that's all I have.